Hi everybody. So last week you saw John make his video where he showed you the preparation of our nice iron complex, which I don't remember the proper name of because I'm not as smart as the other professors, so I like to call it Green George, its nickname. So here's Green George, all dried from last week, looking very pretty. So, this week, what we're going to do is we're going to test to make sure that Green George is actually what we think it is, and we're going to do that by titrating it. So, I've already masked out the samples because, I didn't feel like moving the camera, but basically you're going to do 3 sets, you're going to do 2 titrations in triplicate. So in our beaker, I've measured between 0.2 and 0.24 grams of the complex. And I have those numbers written down for future reference on my trusty data sheet. So, here is sample number 1. So what we're going to do is we're going to dissolve it in about 70 milliliters of water. So, got my trusty DI water. I'm just going to measure out about 70 mils of it. And that'll go right in there with the Green George. Give it a nice swirl to make sure it's nice and dissolved. And you get that nice palish green color. Not as nice a green as the color you made last week, but still nice enough. However, that's not enough. We also have to make sure that it's acidic, because otherwise the titration won't work properly as the potassium permanganate starts to react with the wrong thing. So, we're going to measure out about 10 mils of our 6 molar acid. And this is the strong stuff, so I'm going to be very careful when I use it. Alright. So I have about 10 mils. I'm just going to go right in there. I'll give another swirl. As you can see, it looks like the color changed a little bit, became a darker green, maybe even a yellowish actually, so lighter rather. And now we want to let this heat, because so much of the reason why we added acid, this has to be the right temperature in order to react, or you'll get side reactions going on. So, I'm going to take it and I'm going to put it on my trusty hot plate over here. As you can see, I've already done the other 2 samples because you guys don't have to see me do this 3 times. But you're going to do this in lab, you're going to do this 3 times so you can double and triple check that your numbers are what they're supposed to be. So those are heating, and we're going to let them heat until they're about 80 degrees. So I'll put my thermometer in there. I just put it on, and it's about 25 degrees. So I think we have a few minutes to go. So, what can we do while we're waiting for that to heat up? Well, I think it'll be a good idea to prime our burette. So, as we've discussed in the past, whenever you're using burettes or volumetric pipettes or any of those fancy things, you want to make sure that they're clean. You don't want other things to be in there that might react. So, I'll take it. And first, we're just going to wash some water through it. So let's put some water in there. About 20 mils. Start with, I'll rinse out the tip. And then, because I don't feel like waiting for a full 20 milliliters of this to pour out, I'll wash the rest of it. So, get a nice swirl, and there we go. So now I've washed this through with water, and now I'm going to wash it through with the stuff that we're actually titrating with, which is this stuff, this beautiful dark purple grape soda looking potassium permanganate. On your post-lab submission last week, you did some sample calculations to calculate what the actual value of the potassium permanganate is. Those were approximate values. We're using a slightly different value, as you can see, which is 0.02005. That might be different for you guys when you do your actual calculations. That's just the sample I'm using now. Alright, I'm back. I apologize about that. We've been having some issues with the hoods recently, and I had to pause the video to deal with that. That might happen a couple more times. If it does, I apologize for the weird editing. So anyway, back to where I was. I just washed my burette out with some water, and now I'm going to put some potassium permanganate in there. But I'm going to close this first before I spill it all over myself. This stuff will stain very, 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 very badly, so you don't want to spill it everywhere. If you get it on your clothes, they'll pretty much be purple for the rest of your life. And if you get it on your fingers or your skin, the discoloration will go away, but it will stain your fingers like a dark yellow color, so it'll look like you've smoked 30 packs a day for many, many years. Some nice nicotine fingers. But anyway, rinse my burette out with potassium permanganate. Rinse the tip through. That's enough. And then go back, get a nice twirl, make sure everything's covered in a nice layer of potassium permanganate. So now that it's nice and rinsed, you can go ahead and fill it up, and we'll fill it up the 0 mark. And I'm going to need some more apparently. So there actually doesn't seem to be that much potassium permanganate left over, so I might only have to do one titration for you. I apologize. But anyway, let's fill this up. And I'll pause the video while I wait for the solutions to heat. So I'll see you in a minute. Alright, I am running low on potassium permanganate, so I'm only going to do one titration for you in the video. However, I do have some extras over there, so if I end up messing up in any way, or I just over-titrate and don't get to see the pretty colors, I have enough to redo some. But we're going to focus on this one. So to start with, let's look at our burette. See how that's filled with a dark, dark, dark liquid? It's very hard to read the meniscus in that bad boy. So usually, when you're reading the line, we tell you to read from the bottom of the meniscus because it kind of curves like this. However, for the potassium permanganate, since it's so dark, it's actually very hard to see that. So for our purposes, we will read from the top. So I'm starting with 0.00 milliliters because you want to have 2 decimal places. And we're going to put some in. If you notice, we start with this yellowish color, and as you put the potassium permanganate in, it kind of goes ready before eventually going away. I also didn't add any indicator to this because the purple potassium permanganate acts as its own indicator. As it reacts, it turns into something else that's actually colorless, so the purple color disappears. Once it's done reacting, the purple color will stay. So this acts as its own indicator. So you don't have to put any phenolphthalein or methyl orange or whatever your indicator of choice is. So we put some in, we swirl, and we keep going. And as you can see, I'm going a little fast on this just because I know approximately how long it should take. It takes a little while for these guys. Starting to linger, so I'm going to go slower. You might also notice, if you're watching the video carefully, that as I add the potassium permanganate, the yellow color of the solution is also starting to disappear. potassium permanganate, the purple stuff, is reacting with the yellow stuff to create something that's colorless, which is why it acts as its own indicator. So I'll do this for a little while, and you can see the end result, which should be about a light pink, maybe even a peach color if I'm at the right temperature. So yeah, as you can see, the yellow color is pretty much gone at this point, and we're left with this nearly colorless solution that's actually quite hot, so I'm going to put it down. So, there you go. There's your light pink, kind of peachish color. I think I did a good job on that one. So that's your endpoint. And just so you can see, I'll add a bit more because it doesn't matter. Well, before I do that, let me write down the number because I don't want to start over. So I'm going to call that 27.01. Because like I said, you always want to have 2 decimal places. So, just so you can see, because it doesn't matter at this point, I have it written down. There's what it looks like when it's over titrated. It's a similar color to phenolphthalein because we're now adding this purple stuff to it that's no longer reacting. So, I'll continue with the next part in a minute. I'm going to let that cool down for a sec. Alright, we're back. As you can see, my solution is still, a deep purple color. I think this color is really pretty. I want to paint my bedroom this color one day, but Professor French disagrees with me. So, some people like it, some people hate it. Anyway, now that we've just filled this entire thing with potassium permanganate, we have to get rid of it. So we can do the next step. So, what are we going to do? We're going to react it away with some zinc metal. So, take a tipful, put it right in there, and I'll give it a swirl. And look at that magic. It's gone. So, basically, what we did in that first step is we were analyzing how much of the oxalate ion, or C2O42-, was present in our solution. So we titrated that with the potassium permanganate. Now, however, we want to do the next step, which is to see how much iron is in the solution, which means we have to start over from the beginning. So, any excess potassium permanganate is going to react with the zinc metal, and then we want to heat it up again. Basically, we're going to do the same thing. So, I'm going to take my solution, I'm going to put it on my trusty hot plate. And I'm going to let that come to a boil, which is going to take a few minutes. The last time we heated it only to 80 degrees. This time we're going to actually let it boil. So, I'll bring you back in when I need you. Alright, so I've had this sitting on the hot plate for a little while now, and it's started to come to a nice boil, and you can see those fumes starting to come off of it. That is, in part, a little bit of water vapor coming off as it boils, but that's mostly hydrogen gas, because remember, earlier we put sulfuric acid in there, which is now also reacting with that zinc metal and releasing those hydrogen ions in the form of H2 gas. But anyway, that's just a side fun fact. The main thing we want to focus on is our solution, which is boiling. As you can see, it is still in fact pretty much colorless. What often happens is people won't put enough zinc in their solutions, so as it heats up, that colorless goes away and starts to become yellow again. If that happens, you just have to add more zinc to it and let it keep going. I was hoping that would happen so I could show it to you, but I'm too good at what I do, and I put enough in that it didn't actually do it. So, that's on me. So, I'm going to take it off of the hot plate. I'm going to use my fancy glove to do so. I'm going to put it on here. And I'm going to turn this off because I will 100% burn myself with that if I left it on. And I'll put my goggles on because I took them off and I forgot I did that. So anyway, let's come over here. So now we have all that zinc in there. But we want to titrate our solution with more potassium permanganate. As you can see, I filled it up. The issue being, we put that zinc in there to get rid of all of the potassium permanganate. And there's still some zinc left in there. If I start titrating it with more potassium permanganate, it's going to react with the zinc and it's not going to actually titrate. So we have to get rid of it. So, I'm going to take one of my other Erlenmeyer flasks. This one looks good. I'm going to do a gravity filtration. As a reminder, you take your funnel and you take your piece of filter paper, which I have over here. And you're going to fold it once in half. You're going to fold it again in half. So you get this quarter circle. And you're going to puff it open. So now you got your funnel, one on one side, and 1, 2, 3 on the other side. And I'll put that right in the funnel. And I'll get my squirt bottle, which doesn't have its cap on it. And I'll just wet this a little bit. So, now that I have my gravity filtration setup done, I'm going to filter this while it's still hot, because the point is we want this to still be hot when we titrate so the potassium permanganate reacts with the right thing. So, pour a little bit into there and we'll let it filter. And I imagine this will take a few minutes, so I'm not going to make you stare at me and watch the whole thing. You know what you're doing. I'll come back to you in a minute. Alright, so my filtering is pretty much done. However, just to be safe rather than sorry, I'm going to take this, give it a nice squirt of water, give it a swirl, put it in. And I'm going to let the last of that filter off for just a second while I put gloves on because I realized I took them off. Alright, now I'm properly safe. So I'll just let the last few drops of that drip out of there. And you can see all that zinc metal that used to be in there that we've now taken out of it, filtered out. And we're left with our iron ions and some other funky things in solution. So now, I'm going to titrate again. I've refilled the burette, as I showed you earlier. There it is, all nice and full. Let's zoom in a little bit. And we're going to go. Once again, my initial volume is 0.00 milliliters because you want 2 decimal places. Now, if you remember, the last time it took about 27 milliliters. This one's going to be much, much shorter. However, we're still looking for that same light pink, peachish color, because as with the last time, potassium permanganate basically acts as its own indicator. So, a little bit, give it a swirl. We started off with a colorless solution. Potassium permanganate goes in, gives a nice purplish sheen, and disappears. You will notice, though, that this will do pretty much the opposite of what happened last time, whereas you continue to put it in, it's actually going to get more of a yellowish color to it. And I'm just about at the point already where I want to be careful with how much I put in. So, drop by drop. I even want to go slower than that. Lucky me, I got saved. That was more than I wanted to put in. Ooh. I messed that one up a little bit. Went a little too far, but it's fine. There's, a pale pinkish color. It's not the peach. It's not that pale peach I had last time, but it's good enough. Couple of drops too many. You saw that, but it's fine. So, my final number is, I'm going to call that 4.77. And there you go. We've now done all of our tests necessary to prove that Green George was there. Now we just have to do some math to prove it, which Professor French made in her videos. As with last time, I'll show you what it looks like when it's really over-titrated, just so you can get a look. There's that deep magenta color that I really love. Alright, I hope that this was helpful. Have fun.